Okay, first run, 7 hours and 32 on charge for the third anode test. Starting 20 milliamps. Well, okay. Alright, so that's been soaking overnight in the electrolyte. That's the anode side. That's the cathode's now had 70 charges on it. I think it's alright still. I have to check that. The anode was constructed with this ratio of stuff. 2 grams of zinc oxide, 2 grams of zinc powder, 3 grams of graphite, 5 grams of carbon, 6 grams of cement and 8 grams of water. It measured up to be 14 ohms, holding it by my hand and a little alligator clip. And the important factor here is once you mix this and put it in your mould, is cover it with some Glad wrap and keep the moisture in there for, I keep it there for like about a week. And then I take it off and let it dry for another week. So about 2 to 3 weeks drying time. Probably not that much you need, but I was still testing this one. That's number 2 anode mix. So we peaked out at 65 milliamp hours with that ratio of mix. So in this mix I'm hoping the zinc oxide will dissolve out and leave little pore sites for zinc buildup, but we'll see. The zinc will probably also melt out of it as well. It's holding its voltage, not too bad. Okay, the first run's completed. We got 54 milliamp hours and 46 milliwatt hours. 2 hours and 43 minutes, so that's not too bad. Considering the first run on the last test cell was 1 hour and 58 minutes and 39 milliamp hours, 38 milliwatt hours compared to 2 hours and 43. Average voltage is 85. Average voltage there was up there for some reason. Alright, I'll keep charging for another 20 days and see what we get. Okay, this was the run of the 4th charge. So we've dropped significantly. We're only down to 23 milliamp hours and 1 hour and 10 run time. The cell was charged up for 6 hours and 44. So I think the cathode was finally given way in that area maybe. We're losing power. That's the graphite sort of dissolving, even where the contact was. That's the contact, it was a graphite pad. So I've replaced the cathode with one with a wire mesh in it. So for the runs of the cell first, where we were, for the first charge it was 54 milliamp hours and 46 milliwatt hours on a 7.5-hour charge, so that's up compared to the last test cell at 3 hours and 20, that was 39, so we'll go 7 hours, 36, so we're nearly up 20 milliamps with this mix. It changes somewhat after 10 charges. So for the cathode now, for charge 5 and after, the ohms on the cell, cathode cell, was 26 ohms. It's constructed with 2.55 grams of graphite, 2 grams of nickel oxyhydroxide, 4 grams of cement for the binder, and 6 grams of water. So I've just connected it without a charge, and it's sitting at 1.4 volts. So the negative side probably still has zinc build up, from the 7-hour charge, and that's why it's pretty high. It's holding 1.4 volts. So we'll put a load on it. So no charge. I just dropped that cathode into the electrolyte just then. So it needs probably 24 hours before it soaks in, and starting a test. So if the anodes start to work with the nickel mesh inside them, I can get rid of the graphite. So that's heaps cheaper, because a sheet of graphite that size, that's 300 by 300 millimeters, and that's like, for 2 of them was like $50 something. Okay, I'm going to stop the running of the cell and give it a 2-hour charge to see what happens. So this is its first run for the cathode now, 5 for the anode. Alright, so I'll charge it up. We'll get back. Okay, the cell's had 2 hours on charge and I just connected it. It's been on for a minute. It's still holding 2 volts. It's got a good rateage of drop for voltage, slowly, but it's making some noise. If you can just hear it tweaking. Okay, back with a 4-hour and 37-minute charge. Cell's been soaking, well, the cathode has been soaking overnight, so around about 15 hours or more. Probably a bit longer because it was during the day. So we'll see how it goes. It's still squeaking, that cell. Can't hear it now. Data log is making too much noise. The voltage is still pretty good on this one for some reason. Normally it drops down to 1.8 straight away and then slowly goes down faster, but it seems to be working out well, which is good because we can get rid of the graphite. So this one's drying up where the graphite was, but I think it's definitely broken through there, or it's not, it's losing conductivity. The pad's still fine. Discharge number 10, not going too well. I replaced the anode with that piece of zinc, and you'd think the zinc would work better, but look at it. That's just ridiculous for a real piece of zinc. I don't know what's wrong with that zinc piece. So far, all of these runs here are with the carbon anode with the zinc, well, this anode. Only number 10 is with the zinc plate. So we started off at 54 milliamps. And we sort of increased here, but we're dropping down. I was just wondering if it was the anode or the cathode mix that was wrong. But I reckon the anode's okay. I do reckon the nickel oxyhydroxide is playing a negative part in the cell for some reason. Maybe it's not very conductive, because the carbon battery version with the zinc plate as the anode was pretty good. And that's at the 25th charge and it's doing 120 milliamps. So, and that was just this mix, some graphite, carbon, cement and the water. So it was less it was less resistance on it compared to 26 ohms though. But what's with the zinc plate? It's slightly going up now. I'll leave it running, see what happens, but maybe the cathode is a bit dicky in this. I don't have a replacement one, I've only got that one. Or I got the other one here. It's just, but it'll do the same effect with the graphite. I could try that one just to see if the cathode's knackered. Could be oxidizing or converting around the nickel wire inside and just not being conductive. Very odd behaviour in the cell. Check the graph out. Okay, back with a 6-hour charge, ready for a discharge, starting now. The negative cell, the anode in this one for this run is this one. This time the zinc plate failed, and this was the zinc plate, had 6 hours and 47 minute charge and only ran for 1 hour and 40 minutes. Only 34 milliwatt hours, that's a zinc plate. So I think this one looks like it's working pretty well. It's still at 2 volts. The other one would have dropped down to 1.6 by now. That was that one. That was the one with the zinc oxide in it. This one, zinc oxide, zinc powder, graphite and carbon and some cement and water. So this one was 14 ohms, but I used a bit of copper as a pad, so that probably would have been a bit lower too. That was just with the probe. So I'm trying to eliminate which electrode's not working properly. So based on this one, it's starting to drop quickly, but doesn't start to perform until it gets to 1.1 volts. Okay, going by this, 3 minutes. I think the cathode is the bad element in the cell. Still at 1.9 volts, but I don't know what happened there. It's dropping right down. It's got no power. Alright. Tomorrow, had enough for today. After the last run, number 11 on the cathode, made up of this, it failed, 3 minutes to run. So I hold that cathode out just to check if the negative plate is okay. I substituted it with the other graphite type plate I had over here. And it's run 2-hour charge, ran for 2 hours and 24, average voltage is 48 milliamp hours and 52 milliwatt hours. And that's the mix. It's got only carbon in it and graphite, but it's a higher cement content and slightly higher on the water. So we have 4 cement there, 6 water, 5 cement, 7 water, and it came out to 8.4 ohms on the graphite. So here's the run of it. It's been already discharged. So tomorrow what I'll do is change the cathode back to the zinc oxide electrode, negative anode. So the anode is this. Currently it's got that anode in it. And tomorrow's run, we'll go back to this one to see what happens, if this was any good. Since the cathode was proven to be no good. It only had a short circuit of 4 milliamps. Normally it's like 60 and it drops. Well, it's intact. That's it there. I think you can see through there and something. What was it? Oh yeah, I can see the nickel wire. Maybe the nickel wire expanded and lost its connection throughout there. So those shiny pieces are the nickel substrate. Okay, back with the 30th discharge of the cell. It seems to be performing much better with a 3.8 volt charge for 2.5 hours this was charged for, and we've been running for 1 minute and we've just hit 1.9. So what was going on? So the first lot of charges here was with the zinc plate side, made up of this, and the cathode was made up of this. So we were sort of somewhere in the ballpark higher than the last cell, with 48 milliamp hours, 52 milliwatt hours, and then we sort of dropped off. I put the new cathode in here, and we sort of started here with the charge. I was thinking the cathode was no good. That was the one with the nickel lattice put in the center of it. So we're going, this one here is back to the graphite pad on the back of the cell, down in there. And what I'm thinking maybe is going on, this is the zinc pad from the other one, that one, without the zinc oxide. So what's happening here, I reckon the electrolyte's not as strong and it doesn't dissolve it off, and this is a oxidized zinc left over here, and maybe the cause of the failure. But it seems to be the zinc oxide negative electrode is performing a bit better than one without the zinc oxide. Could be various factors still interfering. I haven't tried that one on 3.8 volts, so the 3.8 volts may damage the graphite. Like that was just standard charge we were doing, and that sort of damaged it. I think it runs for, I've done 3 this is the third charge at 3.8 volts. So the first charge was for an hour, it ran for 1 hour and 35 minutes. Average voltage was 1.12, which is higher in voltage. 32 milliamp hours and 36 milliwatt hours. It was higher here because of the voltage is up. And repeated again with a 2-hour charge and sort of increasing. So I did a 2.5 hour charge right now, and I'll see where that sits. I've got another cell for the cathode to try and mix out next. 3 grams of graphite, 5.5 grams of carbon, 1 gram of nickel oxyhydroxide this time, only one. The 2 grams was too much. I think that cell was no good. 4 grams of cement, 6 grams of water, and I put these nickel pellets, which is essentially the nickel wire just trimmed off with the side cutters, and I made this. I put 2 grams of it in, that's it there. Just they're like, the wire's 0.5 millimeters thick, and I just trimmed it as small as I could. I put 2 grams of that, but that weighs a lot, so there's not a lot in 2 grams really. That's to help with the conductivity, so we'll see how that one goes after this run. And it's drying at the moment, so it needs another, probably the rest of the week to dry. So I'll get back with the update on this one. Right, back with this run. So for a 2.5 hour charge at 3.8 volts, it runs for 2 hours, 41 milliamp hours and 50 milliwatt hours. The good thing here is the average voltage is up now, 1.2 instead of 1.1, or lower for the longer runs. So it's an interesting cell. It's not that powerful, but it's made cheaply. Doesn't look like it's damaged. I got the graphite plate right down there now, holding it firm. I'll just stick that back in there. Alright, I'll keep testing until the other plate's dry, and then I'll make a new video for the other plate. The cell was charged for 8 hours and 15 minutes, and this is the voltage result. So it's somewhat lower. It was 2.5 volts as a charge for that long. So notice the drop off straight away. We'll see if it gets an hour at 1 volt. Okay, so it never made 1 volt an hour with the lower charge voltage. Where's our hour? Yeah. I think there, 44 minutes at 1 volt. With the 3.8 volt charge, lasts for an hour and 15 or a bit more. We'll be able to see by the average voltage. Results of a 2.5 volt charge for 8 hours. Only 1 hour and 20 minute run time, 27 milliwatt hours, 27 milliamp hours and 30 milliwatt hours. 1.11 average voltage, which is not too bad considering these 3 here are the 3.8 volt charges. For a 2.5 hour, it ran for 2 hours and 4 minutes. 1.21 average voltage, 41 milliamp hours and 50 milliwatt hours. So there's a difference with the charge due to maybe the resistance in the cell. A 3.8 volt charge again. It's been running for 59 minutes and it's 1.2 volts. So it definitely likes a larger voltage going through the cell. Must be resistance issues. But then you'd think it would drain out really quickly too with resistance. Alright, some thoughts on why the battery performs a bit better with the higher charge voltage of 3.8. When the battery is first constructed, it has 2 grams of nickel oxyhydroxide to the cathode side, plus the carbon and stuff. After the first few charges, that starts to turn back into nickel hydroxide, I think. And what the higher charge is doing is splitting the oxygen atoms out of the water and allowing that to reform its nickel oxyhydroxide. That's the theory. As I can see, we can sort of, I don't know if you can see, every now and then we get some bubbling, like I think it just moved then, or did I bump the clamp? But anyway, when I first did it, I started seeing some bubbles, where at that 2.5 it doesn't bubble at all. So I'm presuming that's what the cause of the longer lasting cell is now. It's actually converting nickel hydroxide back to nickel oxyhydroxide. It's just a theory, but I think that's what it is. This run was charged for 2.5 hours at 3.8, but I moved the plate slightly closer, so it's about 15 mil that end and 10 mil this end. The clamps are sort of interfering to get it any closer, but at that voltage it was pumping an amp through the cell for it started off about 900 and went up to an amp by 2.5 hours. So cell's still functioning. I thought it might destroy the cell, but I'm getting ready for the next test. That's the one there. That's tomorrow's job. So today this will be its last charging, but it's still holding its 1.2 volts. Should get well past an hour. It's at 51 minutes now. It's not the strongest battery in the world, but if you ever tried making a battery at home, you're not going to make a lithium ion. Okay, the last run for the cell, for the cathode anyway. I'm going to keep the anode and substitute it with the other one. And that will be tomorrow, so I'll post the video sometime soon. This one ran for 1 hour and 52 minutes after a 2.5 hour charge. Slightly down still. Still looks intact. Doesn't matter where you put that cell. If I move it right away, still 0.9 volts, that's right over there. And if I move it right in there, still no difference. Okay, back with the results. We had 44 charges on the current cell. 45, I forgot to write the results, but it was pretty close to this one here. We were like, it's on the video, just before this bit was the last run. So it's 37 milliamp hours, 46 milliwatt hours. These were 3.8 volt charges. The 2.5 volt charge for 8 hours was only 27 milliamp hours and 30 milliamp hours. So there's a resistance issue maybe. That's why we needed the 3.8 volts. Or it does actually need a bit more power input than trickling in. At 2.5 it was only doing around about, I think it starts off at 200 milliamps and works its way down to like 80 to 70. So we did, this was the initial start test. We got 54, then we went to 57, dropped right down there. Went right up here, 67 was a good one. And as you can see, it sort of declines and stabilizes around about under the 50. Here was a zinc plate, just to check, so we didn't get any improvement on a zinc plate. I can't remember what happened here. So we did, this is the anode, the negative plate we were using. Then I did swap it to this one at some stage, which was no zinc oxide, but I think it plated and then oxidized, and then the oxidized part doesn't have any function. And for the cathode, it was 2.2 grams, of nickel oxyhydroxide 2.55 of graphite. Oops. 6 grams of carbon, 4 grams of cement, and 6 grams of water. So a quick peek at the next one. Next cell is constructed for the cathode. It's only 1 gram of nickel oxyhydroxide, but 2 grams of nickel pellets, which is just a 98% nickel wire. That's nickel wire. That's like many strands there wound up to act as a current collector. I sort of got the cut-off pliers and chopped small pieces off. Alright, so average, but not too bad. Seems to be long living cell, so probably multiple charges at least for a while. It doesn't seem to be breaking down, the plates that is. And don't like the graph foil though at the back. That seems to turn into that big chunky mess. The zinc plate sort of doesn't get consumed anymore, so oh yeah, there's a little bit of corrosion down there. So that could still dissolve away and be a dead cell later. So that's it for that video. So I'm going to soak this for 2 hours in electrolyte and then start testing. So thanks for watching.